This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! It's time!
You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AtomCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. USCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez live from New York, and Will McClary. What's going on, guys?
What's good, family?
What's up, everyone? If I cut out on you guys, just let me know.
As always, we're on the FightFans Radio Network. You can get in touch with them through their lines of social media, through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream, all using FightFans Radio, that one username that has all of their shows, all of their updates, and all of their content via FightFans Radio. You can get in touch with us through lowblow505@gmail.com, also through our Twitter feed through @thelowblow, and we're also on YouTube, which we have tons of interviews from Jorge live in New York, featuring the media scrums with Miguel Cotto and Austin Trout, also the open workout with Miguel Cotto. We also have a video interview with Harold Letterman. Much more content on our YouTube page. It is youtube.com/lowblow505. Please check that out. Also, we are on Facebook. It also has the latest YouTube videos. Just type in Low Blow Podcast into the search, bring that up, and they'll have all our updates. Just click the like, and you'll be set to go. So let's not waste any time, guys, and let's talk about, I know for our show, it's probably one of the most anticipated fights of 2012. It is Austin Trout versus Miguel Cotto. The weekend's finally here. I know I was talking to you, Jorge, and I couldn't believe this is this weekend. I was shocked that you're going to New York. I thought it was in a couple of weeks, but it's in fact this weekend. There's been plenty of pre-fight hype, including the Showtime special, all-access special featuring Miguel Cotto and Austin Trout. I want to ask you, Jorge, from a media standpoint, you're there in New York now. How much respect is Austin Trout getting? Is he's getting kind of that respect of, Austin Trout's a good little fighter, but Miguel Cotto is the main event superstar, and Cotto's expected to win? Or do people are giving Austin Trout the respect that he deserves, and that he is an equal and deserves to be in the same ring as Miguel Cotto?
It's actually quite fascinating what you're saying here. Little from the first day, there wasn't much access to Austin Trout before he actually made it here. But as soon as he walked into the Madison Square Garden Theater lobby, where the main press conference was held yesterday, the media mobbed him. They actually spoke to him for about 40 minutes, and then even after the main press conference, they spoke to him even more. It seems like the more they look into, the more they research, the more they learn about this guy's story, that he had to fight in Panama to fight a Panamanian, in Canada to fight a Canadian, and then he had to fight 3 times in Mexico in the last 2 years. That's something unheard of. That's something that you hear a European fighter actually doing, not an American. So the more the media is hearing about Trout, the more respect they're giving him, and the more they actually love him.
You know what they kind of remind me of, Jorge, in terms of how he's coming up, is a little bit in comparison of how Marvin Hagler came up, because he had to do some rough things as well in terms of getting that notoriety, and it took him a long time. But when he actually got there, we all know, he's a Hall of Famer, man. So hopefully Austin can, follow that path as well.
No, definitely. And, I think just the boxing in general is in a win-win situation. Let's say, for instance, Austin Trout were to lose this fight against Miguel Cotto, then we'll have the heavily anticipated fight between Cotto and, Canelo Alvarez. If Austin Trout wins, the sport has a superstar now in Austin Trout that just comes out of nowhere in obscurity. So no matter the results this weekend, it's a win-win for boxing fans, I think.
Are you surprised that Canelo Alvarez picked Cotto to be the winner? Or you think that's just because he beat up his brother?
No, I wasn't. I think for Canelo, what he thinks, I think he's going for most of the boxing world and picking Cotto just because of, I guess, history is on his side. Miguel Cotto is one of, I don't know if you agree with this, Will, but one of the top 10 fighters, I think, in the last 5, maybe even 10 years. So I think he's just going with history and, based off of I guess, experience, if you will. Trout hasn't been on this big of a stage. He did fight in front of about 14,000 people in Panama, but Madison Square Garden, the mecca of boxing, it's a whole different ballgame up here, and I think a lot of people are picking Cotto to win just because they don't know how Austin Trout is going to deal with all that pressure and just all that, just basically just being in the spotlight for the first time in his career.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, Jorge, Ring magazine on their website, they have the experts column, and they pretty much have it 11-4, favoring Miguel Cotto to dethrone Austin Trout. And you said that if Trout wins by any ways necessary, that there's a star born. But with Austin Trout, he's not really known as a knockout artist. So if Trout makes the fight really rough, really technical, really not too eye-pleasing to casual fans, do you think in a way this could be somewhat of a negative for Austin Trout by kind of going in with the philosophy of winning any ways necessary? Does he need to be impressive, or does he need the victory by any means necessary? What do you think he has to do?
The victory by any means necessary. If he pulls off a decision in Madison Square Garden against a Puerto Rican, that'll be spectacular. That'll definitely show that he demonstrated a great ring generalship. You talk about knockout artists also. I mean, Andre Ward's not too big of a puncher either. I mean, he's a boxer puncher. I mean, he definitely has strength, but he's a lot more technical than he is a power puncher. So maybe Trout can develop into that. Go ahead, Will.
I was just, I was going to mention that I was just watching, Miguel Cotto's fight against Zab Judah in Madison Square Garden, and man, that Madison Square Garden gives him true power. So, I mean, I think that he's going to definitely have a little bit of an extra edge, in that ring. But, in terms of Austin Trout, you made a good point in terms of, Andre Ward not having, really terrific power. However, he's got, his personalities, such as being the son of God. He's a family man, and in terms of achieving that star power, what part of Austin Trout's personality are fans gonna buy into and accept outside of the ring?
I think of how open he actually is with everyone. I mean, he's not the type not to mess around. I mean, there was a YouTube video of him and I just shooting hoops, just hanging out. You know what I mean? It's rare that you see that with any superstar. Just go ahead and mess around. With the reporter and not be scared of it. I think he's very playful. If you follow him on Twitter, the guy's freaking hilarious, and he runs his own Twitter. Someone told me he's up to 70,000 followers now. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, for somebody that only had 4,000 2 weeks ago, that's incredible. If that is indeed the case. But I think just people will realize, the type of person that he actually is. He is a man of God, but he's not the typical, I guess I hate to say that it's stereotypical, but the typical man of God who basically just preaches the Bible and doesn't mess around. I mean, he's a pretty outgoing guy, always interacts with fans there online. So I think that is something that's going to come about, and people are actually going to like him. There's a video I just posted actually before I got on the phone where he's having a media workout, or he had a media workout earlier today, and he invited his kids to jump in the ring and just pretend to spar with him for about 15 minutes. So, I mean, that was a great PR opportunity, and I think something that'll definitely, help the public like him even more.
Mm-hmm. I saw a quote with Austin Trout saying that if he loses this fight, that he might be concerned that he might be blocked out of big money fights in the future. Do you agree with that statement? Let's say if this is a classic, and if Trout loses, could he be in line for an immediate rematch, or could he be in line for other big money fights, or does he have to win in order to kind of be in that kind of top echelon of boxing draws? I mean, does he have to win? I mean, if he loses here, does it mean he goes back to the bottom of the line like he's kind of thinking here? Is it a win or go home, or do you think just a good performance in Madison Square Garden against a good known pay-per-view draw like Miguel Cotto and a really good fighter in Miguel Cotto, do you think that's good enough for him in his career?
I think he either has to win or he has to, put up one hell of a battle for people to actually respect him. I don't know what you think, Will, but that's what I think he has to do.
I was just going to say the same thing, actually. Just a little elaboration. I mean, of course, we're in here in Albuquerque, so we're rooting for him. You know, he's well known here. But, you know, against Miguel Cotto in Madison Square Garden, it's definitely got to be a win. He definitely has to make his mark. You know, in his last fight, that's what he was looking to do. It didn't quite happen. You know, being on Showtime, I think has helped him a lot, as you mentioned, with, you know, his Twitter followers increasing. But, you know, he has to go for the gusto now. Otherwise, you know, Miguel Cotto, he's getting close to retiring. He's already speaking about that. He's already pretty much a legend. You know, he's pretty much going to be a Hall of Famer. So Austin Trout really needs Cotto on his resume as a win, not just, you know, a 12-round, you know, loss for a unanimous decision, or even if he does have a war with Cotto. At this point in Cotto's career, it's very unlikely that I would see him having a rematch. I think that Cotto wants to fight the remaining best fighters out there and then go ahead and retire. So this is his shot, man. He's got to definitely take it.
Yeah, and just very quickly, when I was with him in Ruidoso last weekend, he was on the phone with his manager, Bob Spagnola, who apparently they were trying to actually amend the contract of trying to get a rematch clause in there. It was actually offered to him, so it sounded like the Cotto camp is the one who asked for a rematch. I'm not certain if that eventually did go through, but a couple of things. The winner is supposed to fight Canelo. That's one of the amendments to that contract. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens. If Cotto wins, it's Canelo for sure. It's going to be a big fight. That'll probably do $1 million on pay-per-view, I think, with the Puerto Rican, you know, with the big star from Puerto Rico over the last 10 years, and you know, the big Mexican star in Canelo. Oh my God, that will be huge numbers. But you know, I think a lot of people in New Mexico are hoping that is not the case. They're hoping that Trout and Canelo Alvarez are the ones that actually fight.
It is a like win-win situation though too. I mean, if you know Austin Trout, you know, if he pulls this out and gets the fight against Canelo, I mean, of course that'd be a good storyline in terms of, you know, his, you know, that he beat Canelo's brother, and then of course, you know, Cotto versus Canelo, you know, just the great Puerto Rican Mexican rivalry continues. So I mean, as boxing fans, we can't lose.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Jorge, as a good segue, because this situation when Austin Trout is in reminds me a lot of George St. Pierre or Carlos Condit. Enemy territory, generally the fight media and fans generally wanting to see the favorite win in order to see that favorite in a bigger fight. Is that kind of bothering Austin Trout, number one? And also, can you kind of compare? I know, you know, obviously you weren't there in Montreal, Jorge, just when George St. Pierre fought Carlos Condit. But can you kind of compare kind of the environment that Carlos Condit was in and that Austin Trout was in? Obviously, with Carlos Condit, he fought a great fight. But really in that first round with Carlos Condit, he seemed kind of nervous somewhat and tentative, and I think that might have cost him. Do you think with Austin Trout, do you think he has to be aggressive early, or do you think he can just fight his fight and eventually, you know, play out his game plan in order to outlast Cotto?
That's a great question. A lot of people don't know that Austin Trout's father's side of the family is based out of New York. So I mean, he has a grandfather here. He has several cousins that are here and have gone to his workouts. So he's got family here. That's where the difference is with I think Carlos Condit. Trout feels at home here. He's a big Jets fan. He's a big New York Knicks fan. So to be here in the city that he's been before, he actually feels comfortable and feels that this is his time to go. Opposite with Carlos Condit, where you're going to a foreign country, no one's giving you a shot, you have everyone against you. Obviously here, 90% of the building's probably going to be against Trout, but I think just having his family here, his kids, his wife, and you know, his extended family who lives here, I think he feels very comfortable in the city that, you know, he wasn't supposed to feel this comfortable in.
Speaking of the GSP Carlos Condit fight, we haven't really talked about it. What are your thoughts, Jorge? I think everybody really just respects the hell out of Carlos Condit's performance. What do you think went wrong for Carlos? Do you think it was his bottom game that kind of failed him? We talked about how I thought at least that I thought he was going to be able to get back up, scramble, get sweeps, and get back to his feet. But that wasn't the case. Tristan Critchfield, who we had on 2 weeks ago, he was right on the money, saying that George St. Pierre's wrestling would be the difference. What are your thoughts on the fight, and what are your thoughts on this Carlos Condit's career going forward after this?
I think Carlos Condit will continue to be one of the top contenders in the welterweight division. If he gets another title shot, that's going to be difficult to say. But as loaded as that weight class is, it's not unthinkable to think that it might not happen again, just because of how loaded the class is, and a loss here or there, will ultimately put you down the list. But when it comes to his performance, obviously it was the wrestling. But even when he was on his back, he did do damage to George. I think in the second round, man, I rewatched the fight, and he must have outstruck him 2-1 in that second one. I mean, Erica might have the exact specifics on that, but it was just unbelievable the amount of work he was doing from his back. We knew he had decent skill. They were making impact with George St. Pierre's face, but I mean, they weren't doing significant damage to where he could have won that fight. The opportunity came in that third round. St. Pierre did an excellent job defending himself when he did go down from that high kick. But for Carlos, it's definitely going to be a tough road to actually get another title shot.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple more questions, Jorge, and then we'll let you go. What can fans expect on the undercard? We kind of talk about the undercards of boxing events all the time. Is there anything that fans should keep their eyes out for, or is this pretty much going to be a one-fight show?
Yeah, I mean, no. Well, I mean, you got Danny Jacobs there. I mean, he came back. He's coming back from cancer. I mean, he almost died. The doctor said he wouldn't be able to box again, but 23-1, 20 KOs. Danny Jacobs is actually making a comeback. Had a huge victory at the last card in the New York area. So definitely Danny Jacobs. I mean, there's also a kid by the name of Jorge Melendez, pretty good Puerto Rican fighter, 24-2 with 23 knockouts. And in a very interesting matchup, especially because I guess it kind of deals with what's happening there in Albuquerque. A fighter by the name of Michael Perez and a fighter by the name of Fernando Carcamo are actually fighting also on the undercard. And people in Albuquerque might remember that. These are the last two guys that Fidel Maldonado out of Albuquerque actually lost to. Fernando Carcamo knocked him out, and Michael Perez, I thought it was a very close split decision that actually went the wrong way, I thought, when Michael Perez was awarded. So that's a pretty good prospect fight. Also, that Michael Perez kid, he was actually supposed to be matched up against Richard Abril for a title fight. Sharif Gary, who's a very good African fighter, he was supposed to fight Abril, got hurt, got pulled off. Michael Perez was asked to step in. HBO turned down the fight because they didn't think Michael Perez was big of a name. So definitely some talent in this undercard. Is it a stellar undercard? No, by all means. It's a C, maybe C+. It's not that good, but guess what? The fight's not on pay-per-view, so are you too upset?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What can fans expect through the rest of fight week? I know there's the weigh-in. Is there any kind of other activities that's going on in New York besides that before the fight happens?
Justin Bieber's here tonight.
in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. I mean, well, they had the lighting of the Christmas tree. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. But as far as boxing-wise, you honestly, know that you're in the boxing mecca here just because of the knowledge that all these reporters actually have about fighters, and even fans. I mean, fans will come up to you and just break down the complete history of boxing, and even the historic gyms that this has had. All these events have been taking, being held at. There was I got to share this with you guys quickly. There was a kind of awkward situation the other day with Yuri Foreman was training at Gleason's. That's where he's based out of. And Miguel Cotto's workout was actually held there. So it was kind of weird that, Yuri Foreman, who lost the title, the WBA title to Trout, and then Trout to Cotto. Cotto ultimately had to give that up. Trout ends up winning the interim version of this, and now here is Miguel Cotto again fighting for the same WBA title. And Yuri Foreman and Miguel Cotto shared a pretty good moment where they actually, hugged and talked for a while. It's good to see that guys still have the love for each other, even though they did, bang it out at Yankee Stadium, a year ago.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it for me, man. Is there anything else you want to ask him, Will, before we let Jorge go?
No, just be safe out there, my friend. And try to get another interview with Harold Letterman, man. That guy.
Oh, I'll try to get him again, dude. He is awesome. How funny was he in that video, man?
He's funny, man.
it's like talking to your cool grandpa, man. So that was a pretty sweet interview. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. This guy's he's super knowledgeable. I wish I had a little more time with him. So definitely good. And I'm gonna put up. I spend a lot of time at Gleason's. Again, if you guys don't know Gleason's gym, I mean, look it up. It's a pretty historic gym, and shared some history there with a couple of people who had old Jersey Joe photos, old Rocky Marciano newspaper clippings. It was pretty cool, and I documented all of it. So I'll definitely have that up when I get back. But no, guys, I mean, I'm trying to hold it down over here and get as much exposure as possible for us. So I'll keep doing the damn thing.
That's awesome. Make sure you keep your eyes out for Max Kellerman too. I know that's a Showtime fight, but I'm sure that's his hometown. So
yeah, no, definitely. I'll keep an eye out for him. Hopefully I'll get him. Maybe I'll ask him to rap his old song.
Awesome. If that's the case, that'll be my ringtone for life. So.
All right, guys. We'll see you. You guys take care.
Right. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
That was Jorge Hernandez joining us. We thank very much Jorge for his time. I know it's kind of late out there in the East Coast, but I'm sure he's going to be giving us plenty of content for the rest of the week. And remember, you can catch him on our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/LowBlow505. Also through Twitter and Facebook. That'll have all the videos that he's uploaded and all the videos that he has kind of on his laptop and he's waiting to upload later tonight. So please check that out all for the rest of this week and all through the weeks to come. So, man, let's get into the standing 5 count. There's other stories going on in the combat sports world. And it all starts with Jorge St. Pierre's return. Now, it was very a lot of skepticism was surrounding how many buys that this UFC 154 would do. But apparently, according to Dave Meltzer, it did around 680,000 buys to 700,000 buys, which to me is a huge success. I was thinking maybe 600 to maybe 500,000 buys just because of the prime time didn't do so well. The prelims didn't really do so well. I mean, there wasn't really that much hype. The ESPN car wash in terms of George St. Pierre going for that week, was basically GSP. He canceled his media appearances, and Dana White had to do it. So, interesting. Erica said that's not good at all, but I tend to disagree because Carlos Condit's not a draw, and people think, or at least outside of New Mexico, think Carlos Condit is pretty boring. I mean, you remember with Josh Koscheck, you had to build up with The Ultimate Fighter. Josh Koscheck's kind of a jerk, and people, like jerks whether they want to see him lose or not. And don't forget with Jake Shields, that was UFC 129, the biggest show perhaps in UFC history, in the Rogers Center in Toronto. So I don't know. This is my opinion. I think the number's actually pretty solid. I know people are, I don't know. People might think of me being a huge UFC backer, but I think that number's pretty successful considering what they had going up against it. But nevertheless, those are the numbers. Honestly, I think the number's going to lean probably a little bit downwards from that, just because we've heard lately. If you remember the Brock Lesnar also Overeem fight, that's supposed to have great numbers, and then we find out it did half the numbers that it did. The same thing with it came out I think a couple of days ago with Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen. Those numbers did lower than what people thought. So I think it was kind of skew lower, but nevertheless, I think George St. Pierre's pay-per-view reputation seems to be intact. At least from his performance, it seemed like he still did a pretty decent job. But, Will, you have some news about a pretty well-known boxer passing away.
Yeah, we want to give our deepest condolences for the Camacho family. Hector Camacho Jr., it's a shame that we had to lose another fighter to senseless violence. Unfortunately, Hector Camacho Jr., he was gunned down in his car while sitting in his parked car. His best friend died, and then, he was rushed to the hospital, and he was put on life support, and his family had to make that rough decision to finally take him off. And we're definitely going to remember Camacho for, just fighting everybody, from the likes of, Roberto Duran, beating, the legendary Sugar Ray Leonard, always willing to fight anybody. I mean, he was definitely the epitome of a showman. I mean, even if you didn't like the fight, you definitely was going to enjoy his ring entrance, his gladiator suits, And he fought the best, even though he didn't beat them all. He fought Julio Cesar Chavez, Oscar De La Hoya, Felix Trinidad. I mean, he didn't back down for nobody. And, it came out that the World Boxing Organization, they agreed that, Camacho, he's going to be inclusive of the top 5 Puerto Rican fighters, along with Felix Tito Trinidad, Wilfredo Gomez, Wilfredo Benitez, and Jose Salomon. So, he would definitely be missed. And in a quick piece of news, real quick, it was really crazy. Even at his funeral, there's a brawl. Apparently, his relatives went insane when a woman leaned down and kissed Hector Camacho Jr. in his casket. So there was even the drama at the funeral. But
there was that was all over TMZ and all over the news outlets. That's just unfortunate that's going to get the headlines instead of celebrating such a really a boxer who contributed a lot to the sport. That's unfortunate.
Another thing interesting too, I think it was only the second person to do this. Him and his son Hector Camacho Jr. fought on the same card, father and son card. I mean, so he was, like I said, he was always a showman. He never backed down from anybody. He's definitely going to be missed in the boxing world, and it's just really a shame that his life was taken the way that it was. So definitely our deepest condolences to the Camacho family.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. On to Strikeforce news. This card just keeps changing, and apparently there's been some injuries to this card. Strikeforce's final show that's happening in January. Josh Barnett will serve. He'll fight his last fight as his final obligation. Who knows what's going to happen after this fight? Maybe he'll go into the UFC, maybe not. I think we all know his love for pro wrestling, especially in Japan. So Barnett, to fulfill his last fight with Strikeforce, will face Nandor Guillermo. That will be on a televised portion of the Strikeforce Champions card. And currently now that card features Nate Marquardt taking on Takeshi Safradine, Daniel Cormier, Gegard Mousasi, Brian Couture will be on there, and Pat Healy. As you know, Gilbert Melendez got hurt. Also, with Luke Rockhold, he got injured, supposedly. Some people are skeptical on how seriously he was hurt, but nevertheless, he pulled out because of reported injury. So January will be the last show of Strikeforce Champions. I know, Will, you are pretty interested in Strikeforce in general, but January will be its last show on that network.
Yeah, I can't lie. I'm a little disappointed because I just like the fights that they produce. But as we discussed on the previous show, looking at on the bright side of things, it does give you a better idea of where the real champions lie. So it's just, I'm also interested to see how these guys, crossing over from Strikeforce are really going to do in the UFC. But I saw some really good fights on that network, so we'll see what happens. But I kind of gotten used to it. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, true. And I think also, with Showtime Sports, from what I've heard, their executives they like MMA. I just think now there's a demand that cannot be fulfilled. I just think Bellator, their obligation is to spike. You have the World Series of Fighting. They're just starting up and really don't have the roster or the money to pull that off. And really the other MMA organizations that have somewhat kind of a lot of pull lie within Asia. So, I mean, really, I just don't see Showtime getting mixed martial arts in the long-term future. But, Will, you have some news about Devin Alexander's next fight and where the location is going to be.
Yeah, so Devin Alexander is back. He's going to be taking a bout with the mandatory challenger Kell Brook on January 19th on Showtime. Now, Devin better do something this time. I mean, it's taking place in Vegas, and he's definitely got to gamble because his last bout with Randall Bailey was a sleeper. I mean, he came back, looked pretty good against, Marcus Madonna, but, he's just he has to have some consistency. He's good, he's okay for one fight, comes back and is terrible in the next. And I think if he's just really going to, really, the way that he was being talked about a few years ago, he should already be on the road to superstardom. I mean, I think that people are still giving him a chance, but he just really has to be impressive within this bout. So hopefully that's a good way to start off the year with Showtime Boxing. And Devin Alexander, I wish him well, but if he doesn't pull off an impressive fight this time, I really don't know what his future career is looking like in terms of ever getting those big pay-per-view draws.
Mm-hmm. UFC contender Chris Weidman undergoes successful surgery He underwent surgery on his shoulder. This kind of funny video on YouTube with Ariel Helwani with Chris Weidman that's pretty much out of it. Personally, I don't know why. I think it was his wife who took this video. It's just kind of hilarious. Just Chris Weidman is this under the morphine, I guess, after his surgery, just pretty much rambling on about various different things. He couldn't really understand what he was saying, but nevertheless, after he recovered, he said, quote, "I'll be 90% in 3 months and 100% in 4." So it seems like he underwent successful surgery. The surgeons fixed a torn labrum and a rotator cuff and an AC joint separation and a slight ligament tear. So it seems like this is not a typical, one of those injuries that Dana complains about. Oh, you're just a wuss, you tore a nail or something, I mean, this guy did some major damage to his shoulder. So hopefully Chris Weidman gets better soon so we can see him in there. But I just think this could be somewhat not a blessing, but this could be kind of a better time for this injury to happen in a way because, the GSP Anderson Silva super fight. This could give him time to recover and maybe come back and maybe get that title shot at the right time. So we'll see what happens there. So, man, let's go 2 rounds real quickly. Do you want to go first or should I?
Yeah, I'll go first, man, because, we kind of were speaking about this before the show started. I mean, that referee in Andre Berto in the Robert Guerrero fight, that was my pet peeve, man, for the 3 rounds. I mean, basically, I don't want to take anything away from Robert Guerrero, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but that referee, he was just not the right pick for that fight. I think that, it was a great fight. Some people are calling it a classic. I don't know if I would go that far.
I agree with you.
But, the ref, good grief. I just cannot understand this guy's calls. I mean, ultimately, I really do think that Guerrero would have still won. So I'm not trying to make any excuses here. But that ref was just ridiculous. I felt that he was just really, at times, just interrupting the fight for no apparent reason. And I just didn't understand how he was chosen. I mean, I just really did not want to see him again. It was, I felt that I had to concentrate on the ref as well as the fighters. And, that's just not a fan's idea of a good match. So I just kept consistently wondering, how is this guy going to mess up this round? Is he going to get in the way instead of being able just to sit back and enjoy the fight? I just really like the ref, Steve Smoker, by the way, and I think that he would have been another good ref. They needed a younger ref that was, I didn't really mind, the fact that he let them fight on the ropes a little bit. I actually liked it, and it kind of reminded me in terms of, you get different refs in mixed martial arts too, where you have some refs that'll let the guys stay on the ground longer up against the cage. Some people like that, some people don't. So I was just, I wasn't really bothered by it, but just, the fact that the points that he was deducting, the warnings that he was doing, the things that some of the fighters were able to get away with, it was just bad. Not impressed with that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we'll get into it more when we talk about the Berto Guerrero fight. But I 100% agree with you, especially with the first knockdown where Guerrero was holding Berto and just punching him, and he knocked him out. And then he warns Berto over and over again for him grabbing. So it's just totally inconsistent. I 100% agree with you.
All the way to the end, Jay. He freaking even hit him after the bell. He was nowhere to be found.
Exactly. He was just, maybe having a hot dog, just chilling over there. I don't know. I think Corona's the sponsor. Maybe he's having one of those, talking to the Corona girls. I don't know, man. But he's nowhere to be found when that bell rang. My thing is just with Ronda Rousey, with her popularity and her signing with the UFC. There's been some comments made by George St. Pierre and Tom Lawler expressing their displeasure with women fighting in the UFC. Some disparaging comments. I just thought I was listening to some guys that were from like the 1950s or something, man. I was completely surprised by their comments. They just really just saying that women don't belong in the UFC. That's not totally what they said, but that's kind of what they're referring to. Really sexist remarks. I'll just say that pretty much. And especially in this sport where it is misunderstood and there's still today people that totally misrepresent MMA and disparage and don't know what they're talking about. I expect a little bit more from the fighters who fight in it to show some respect for women who do the same profession they do. I just thought, they're very distasteful. They know better than that. I don't know. I mean, everybody has the right to their own opinion, but it just seemed totally hypocritical because they go through the same struggles. I'm sure George St. Pierre, when the sport, when he was first entering MMA, I'm sure he was coming across several people that were asking him, why are you doing this barbaric, savagery? Why are you fighting in the cage? And he had to go through the same struggles that Ronda Rousey's experiencing now. And not only that, she's dealing with the whole sexist side of the angle. So I just think for both Lawler and especially GSP, because he is a champion and he's supposed to be this goody two-shoes and this guy with the perfect image, I expect a little bit more from him. So I was a little bit disappointed reading about those comments.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
Massage and mixed martial arts right there. And it's just, that is, I didn't even hear that actually. But yeah, that's crazy because the amount of female fans that UFC has to make such ignorant comments. Like you said, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but that's going to cost him some money.
Yeah, and it's interesting enough because Ronda Rousey tweeted about it, and so did Miesha Tate, and they agreed. They hated those comments, and those two ladies hate each other, so they got them to bond over a tweet.
That's some common ground there.
Yeah, so it is very interesting. Let's talk about this GSP Carlos Condit fight real quickly, man. A great fight, an unbelievable performance by Carlos Condit. I think he has the respect of everyone in the MMA community. Despite the fact that he had some drawbacks in terms of his markability, when he got in that cage, I wasn't really surprised at the fight he put up, to be honest. I was surprised, however, at how strong GSP's wrestling was. Just dominant. GSP, it's kind of, somewhat unfortunate if you don't know the ground game too well, because I can see people being kind of ignorant and kind of saying, that the fight's kind of boring. Why is they spending all that time on the ground? But if you know your stuff, you're going to see Carlos Condit tried to do everything to get up on his feet, every trick in the bag, and GSP had an answer. It was like they're playing chess, and this GSP was just countering every move Carlos Condit had. This unbelievable fight. We talked about the Carlos Condit angle. I want to talk to you, Will, about the GSP angle, because now people are angling towards this Anderson GSP mega fight. As we know in boxing, people move up in weight classes all the time, and it's not really a big deal. But in MMA, we're talking about a 15-pound weight difference.
That's a lot. In boxing, that would be a lot as well.
So if we can compare it to a scenario like that in boxing, a 15-pound weight difference, in MMA, everybody's requesting for this fight to happen because of the mainstream attention that it would get from people that don't really care about MMA. In your mind, do you think... Are you in the mindset that the more the weight is towards the fighter, it favors him? So what I mean is, if the fight's at 180, do you think that will favor Anderson Silva? And if the fight's at 170 or, 175 or at least closer to GSP weight, do you think that favors GSP? Or do you think the weight's not going to be a factor? It's going to come down to the skill set of the fighter?
That's a great question. I mean, a lot of times that's why they have, these catch weight bouts. They've done that in boxing, and I think maybe a good example would be when Manny Pacquiao faced Oscar De La Hoya. I myself was like, this is a ridiculous matchup. Oscar De La Hoya is way too big for Manny, and look what happened. He blew him right out of the water. Also, what it kind of reminds me as well is when we're forced to make these type of, some people see them as super fights, and then some other people are going to see them as, the lack of a great matchup within that weight class. Do we have to go to the extreme of moving up 15 pounds for GSP to fight Anderson Silva rather than him having a super fight without moving up that much in weight? I mean, that's the question. They had Anderson Silva talking about, he's going to finally just, let go of, the fact that he wanted to fight Roy Jones and concentrate on GSP. So it just sometimes it just seems like a straight up circus. I mean, I think that, but I think I think it'd be a huge pay-per-view draw. I mean, they're both, in my opinion, as a casual fan, I mean, those are the two names that I repeatedly hear all the time. So I know people are gonna watch, but I just wonder how much if either guy wins. I mean, of course, it's gonna be great to put that name on his resume, but in terms of their legacy, I mean, how much sense does this fight actually make in terms of skill set rather than entertainment?
It's tough to say because this fight was discussed about a couple of years ago where I think many experts considered them cleaning out their divisions respectively, and people wanted to see that fight put together. I was never really keen on this fight. I can't really tell you why, to be honest. I don't know. It doesn't really make me that excited. But however, it's weird because I think GSP has a decent shot. I mean, you look at Anderson Silva, his takedown defense is not stellar. I mean, everybody's pretty much been able to take him down. I mean, granted, you take a look at Chael Sonnen, he is a way bigger guy than GSP, but nevertheless, I mean, GSP is a great wrestler. So I mean, it's hard for me to believe that GSP has a hold of Anderson. Anderson just stuffing his takedown at no matter what weight they fight at. I just find that even they talk about the speed advantage of George St. Pierre. I find it hard to believe Anderson Silva stuffing a huge takedown from George St. Pierre. I don't see that happening. I see GSP getting a couple of takedowns at whatever fight, at whatever weight they fight at. But I still would pick Anderson Silva to win. But yeah, I'm just not truly excited to see this fight. I just think if the fight does happen, I think Johnny Hendricks gets kind of robbed out of his situation. I think Nick Diaz is kind of somewhat robbed. I think it just helps Josh Koscheck because as long as George St. Pierre is the champion, he won't get a title shot. But however, if there's an interim title on the line here, this could get him in the line for that. I think Rory McDonald, I think he needs to start thinking about his future. I mean, he's a teammate of George St. Pierre, and he's pulling the whole old teammate thing of he won't fight his teammates. So I think this fight has huge ramifications on the welterweight division and the middleweight division. We talked about Chris Weidman, Tim Bosch has a new opponent. Michael Bisping's fighting Vitor Belfort. Guys will have to wait to get their turn at their respective titles if this mega fight happens. So I think it's worth the risk because just for the betterment of the sport. I noticed a bad comparison, but when Randy Couture fought James Toney, as a fight, I hated it, but you take a look at those mainstream sports writers after that fight happened, they somehow respected MMA. They were like, okay, I mean, we may not like mixed martial arts, but at least we know it's a legitimate sport, and you can't have a respected boxer go in there and, beat up an MMA fighter. At least there's some respect gained. I think with this fight, it's kind of a fight that needs to happen for the sport to grow more. So we'll see what happens. But it's certainly not just a cut and dry case of just putting the fight together, that's for sure.
Good point.
Let's talk about Adrian Broner, one of your favorite guys, man, and Antonio DeMarco. Broner gets a TKO at round 8 of a minute 49. Broner with those series of uppercuts. I've known, Will, you've kind of had a love-hate relationship with this guy. Before I get your opinions on Broner, what do you think of Larry Merchant? He was asking some weird questions in this fight.
He acted like he never heard of breast cancer awareness.
No, he's totally shocked at the concept. In case you guys don't know what we're talking about in the fight, DeMarco and Broner are going at it, and Merchant's asking, why is Broner wearing the pink tights? And he kind of says it in kind of a derogatory kind of way. And Jim Lampley's like, it's for breast cancer awareness. CCJ Coleman, Roy Jones Jr. said, and he just seemed totally shocked and confused. He had some weird other comments too. It just seemed like he seemed disinterested. He was saying, Broner, why is he only throwing one punch? He just seemed very disgruntled. I don't know, the old man was sticking out at him. What was going on, man? I don't know what's this deal.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I mean, I was cracking up, and Jim was getting kind of irritated with Larry too. I was cracking up, and it was rightfully so. And then even with the wearing of the pink gloves to show the support. I mean, they were doing it in the NFL as well. And I mean, going back to those comments that GSP made, it showed you we still live in a very sexist society. It's really not that big of a deal. I mean, even Roy Jones said, DeMarco's a champ. He shouldn't be forced to, he lost the fight when he was forced to put on those gloves. I mean, like, oh my goodness, you got plenty of time to wear these crazy outfits. It's not that big of a deal to support a major movement like breast cancer awareness. Oh my goodness. So I don't even understand why we had to argue that. But in terms of I can't wait anymore, I got to jump in the fight.
Sure.
Oh, my goodness. Adrian Broner, you're exactly right. I do hold ambivalent feelings toward him. But as a fighter, I'll be optimistic first. He was spectacular. I really thought that DeMarco was going to put up a better fight, and he was just outclassed. I was really impressed with Adrian Broner's inside fighting. I mean, my goodness. I mean, this guy is so mature in the ring. I mean, he's completely an idiot outside of the ring, but inside the ring, he is a professor, and he went to work, man. And I just really enjoyed the whole fight. I mean, Adrian Broner, the style, I was talking to one of my buddies, and, he's pretty irritated with his comparisons that they're making with him to Floyd Mayweather. And you know what? Hey, one of the things that one of my friends said, he made a good comparison in terms of, is Adrian Broner, the Kobe Bryant, trying to be like Michael Jordan. And you know what? I have to say, I mean, with the defensive style, he's able to get away with it. I mean, it's not like, Floyd Mayweather invented that. He just does it well with that shoulder roll. It's impressive, and I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but I got to say, everybody can't do it, as was pointed out in that Alberto fight that we'll discuss. But, he just did an excellent job. I mean, he can continue to, control the fight the whole time. I never felt that Broner was in trouble at all. And in terms of DeMarco, man, what a sportsman. You know what I mean? Tough to the end, but it's just one of those things. One of the commentators, I think it was Jim, that pointed out that he was just, he's too tough for his own good. And with that, he didn't make any adjustments, and that's something that can definitely be seen as a weakness for DeMarco. And I think even though, his last fight, which ended in the first round, I think that really did him a disservice when these fighters get first-round knockouts and then go up against, elite opponents. And, they're just not prepared, well, they're prepared, but they're not as much as prepared as they could be in terms of, having their previous fight, last in a couple rounds. But in the end, Adrian Broner, he did an excellent job. I think this guy is definitely a superstar in the making. It's just that it's so unfortunate the way he carries himself outside of the ring. I mean, I know that there's the entertainment. He's got to be, a showman, but he's young. Okay, I mean, but really after that fight, that performance, I posted this on Facebook. His performance was so good. I'm willing to be more tolerant of his outside ring ignorance. So I think hopefully he'll mature, and hopefully he leaves the music career alone and just focuses on boxing.
We talked about his star power. So his persona outside the ring, do you see that as kind of, a good thing or a bad thing? Because we talk about fighters, have not having the best personalities outside the ring, especially in MMA with a lot of the guys. They're just kind of bland. And, I mean, they're really good fighters, but they don't really have a lot to offer outside of their skill set. But Broner does. I mean, he does have a personality. Even if you like or you hate the guy, you have some feelings towards him. So could that be a good thing, or do you think that'll get in the way of his fighting ability?
That's a great point. I mean, it's just like, I guess, there's no bad publicity, right? I mean, they definitely got to know who he is. Like you said, they love him or hate him. But I think the only thing that was a little hurtful for him is when, prior to the fight, they showed an interview with Larry Merchant discussing about, what he felt about fans getting irritated with him not making the weight against Escobedo. And, he was just really nonchalant about it. He was like, I didn't make it, so what? And, a lot of fans, they don't like to see that type of thing. They like to see fighters, committed. I think he was going to move up in class anyway. I just don't think that he handled that very well. So, I mean, I don't know if he's trying to make himself out to be, the bad guy of boxing, but his personality is just, I don't know. I'll say this. I haven't run across a boxing fan, hardcore or casual, that has commented to me saying that, this Adrian Broner, man, gosh, I love his personality. He cracks me up. I mean, I know Jorge, he says Jorge doesn't mind him, and he cracks him up, but not to the, what he's trying to be. I mean, it just seems like he's trying to be something else. And people are consistently, point him out to Floyd Mayweather, but, don't point every black fighter out to Floyd Mayweather that talks a little trash. I mean, that's just ridiculous, but it is just irritating the way that he carries himself. So, but like I said, he's extremely young, and that's irritating to me, I'll say. Other people might love it, but I haven't heard from him. But, he's extremely young. I'm sure he'll mature in the ring. And, the guy's got 5 kids. Dang. I mean, so he's got to definitely keep having those good fights.
Exactly. We got a short amount of time, so I want to run down all these fights real quick. Andre Berto, Robert Guerrero, a impressive fight, no doubt. I'm sure it'll probably have to be on the list as a fight of the year candidate. I don't think it'll win for sure. But we talked about the refs, so I want to leave that kind of alone. But I want to talk about in terms of the inside fight, and I guess I know I'm kind of hypocritical here, but I said it a second before. I don't want to talk about the ref, but at the same time, a lot of the inside fighting, the ref is totally getting involved, warning Berto about the grabbing and inside kind of a wrestling match in the words of the ref. So, one, why didn't the ref, maybe take a point away from Berto if he was warning him that much? And also, in terms of at the end of the fight, I mean, the ref didn't step in until they said 4 punches. That was like almost 10. I mean, those guys are going out they're going after the bell a good maybe 7 or 8 seconds after the bell rang, after the 12th round. That was unbelievable. I mean, with Andre Berto and Robert Guerrero. So it's just, I don't know. Luckily, no one got knocked out. I mean, the worst case scenario, one guy knocks out the other. I mean, that could have been a huge incident. So what did you think at the ending of that?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I think, in reality, I think we were so shocked that, the ref was just like, I don't know, I just didn't see him on the screen when because Guerrero caught Berto with about 3 good shots that sent him back into the ropes. The bell rung, and then he got 3 more in. And we're just like, dang, I mean, it was exciting, but the ref, again, was absent. But I want to mention, too, at the end of the fight, I was really disappointed with those fans booing Berto like that. I mean, I don't know if they were talking about, the drug case, in terms of the performance enhancing drugs, but, after fighting a tough fight like that, you've seen Berto's face. I mean, you have never seen Andre Berto look that beat up. I mean, I showed it my wife, she said she couldn't even look at it. I mean, this guy, I mean, he just really, his face, to hang in a fight like that with your face looking like that, you got to be a warrior. And if anything, they should have definitely gave him his props. Now, back to the fight. Berto, I don't know what he was thinking, trying to do the shoulder roll. The shoulder roll defense was not for Berto. I never want to see him do that again. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of you get more respect for guys like Floyd and, even Andrea Broner, who's pulling off with a little bit more aggressiveness. But that defensive style actually took away from Berto's offensive style, which is excellent. He's a brawler. He's a hard puncher. He was leading back. He wasn't comfortable with it. And worst of all, he was getting caught. I mean, yeah, Guerrero definitely, I seen the holding behind the head, which they compared to, Lennox Lewis and Michael Grant. But, I think that Guerrero, I was really impressed with his toughness. I mean, even against the ropes, I mean, he was moving Berto around much easier than I anticipated. And I think that Berto just fought the wrong game plan. It was absolutely horrible. I said, I can't believe that he's not going to make any adjustments. But if anything, his heart, man, what heart does he have? He never gave up in that fight. Those guys are, Guerrero's eye was shut as well. He still had one good eye left. But, I mean, those guys are just fighting on blind fury, man. And it was just, that heart that they have in that fight. It was a tough and rough, ugly fight. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the fight of the year. It was really good to see. But, the fans booing at the end and between Berto's style and that ref, I mean, there was a lot of irritating moments. But I don't know how Berto's going to bounce back for this. He really had a hard time, telling the story in the beginning with, the performance-enhancing drugs, the loss to Ortiz, and now this loss. It's gonna be a tough road back for Berto. But as he pointed out to Guerrero, he said, "Hey, let's just do it again." And just a little rivalry in the post fight. They're like, Guerrero was basically telling, "Hey, the ref was getting on me too, man. Like, no excuses." And Berto just basically responded, "We can do it again." So who knows if we'll see that.
Absolutely. Real quickly, let's touch on Ricky Hatton. He retires after this comeback fight. Really got into great shape. This is another guy, Will, that you respect, but I'm still not one of your favorite fighters. He had the lead before he got knocked out in his fight against Shevchenko in Manchester Arena, knocked out in the 9th round. Do you think Ricky Hatton should hang it up after this fight? He had some moments of really bright spots, but still, he fell victim to just, maybe this being overexperienced and maybe having a little bit of a glass jaw somewhat. Do you think Hatton should kind of give it up here? Or do you think Hatton, based on his performance, should give it a second go? What do you think?
I think he should absolutely hang up the gloves. I mean, I'm just, it worries me in terms of his inability, I should say, to lose. He doesn't handle it well. I mean, the suicidal attempts, the drugs. This is just not a good look for him. And when I was looking at Hatton when he came back, that was specifically what I was looking for. What adjustments that he's made? Is he more of a boxer now versus than a pressure fighter that he once was? And I just didn't really see it. I mean, yeah, he was in impeccable shape. He shed like 70 pounds in 10 months, which is amazing, but it's really hard on your body. And he just, he pretty much resulted to the same tactics. I mean, he was just trying to be a pressure fighter, but he just, he just forgets to duck, to move his head. He was getting caught. And if he didn't get hit with that body shot, I think he was definitely going to be going out to the head. And I'm not really that sure that, he was ahead on the judges' scorecards. I mean, I had it very close. I mean, it could, kind of somewhat going either way. I mean, in Manchester, I don't think Shevchenko was going to win a decision. But, that body shot that he landed on Ricky, I mean, I just think that he's done. Hopefully he saved up his money. He's got a new family. He says he wants to train. He can keep involved in boxing that way. But he just, let's just face it. I mean, he needed to get past Shevchenko to prove that he could fight the elite. And he's just not ready. I mean, he's just not ready. I know he didn't want to go out that way, but I think it's best that he hangs up the gloves.
Well, I think he has also his Haddon Promotions, too. I know his YouTube channel has full of fights on there. So, maybe in the promotion business, he's a big name. I'm sure, if he stays in the boxing game, training, being a trainer or being a promoter, he'll be pretty successful. He's pretty charismatic. So I'm sure, in terms of the world of boxing, this is not the last we've heard of Ricky Haddon.
He has a huge fan base.
Yep, absolutely. Real quickly, this weekend there's Jackson's MMA Series 10 in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Tingley Coliseum. Features the main event of Anthony Burchak versus Matt Lavia, who's a former Marine. You can get tickets basically from holdmyticket.com for ranges from $20 to $125. Basically a really good event. And also sometimes Jackson's, they tend to air the events on pay-per-view. I'm not sure if that's happening or not, but check their website for more details on that. But those events, always fun to watch, always featuring up-and-coming fighters. I know there's a couple of Team Tompkins fighters on the card. Of course, there's local fighters from Albuquerque on there, so please go check that out. That is this weekend. I know Austin Trout's getting all the attentions, but maybe DVR the Austin Trout fight if you want, and go check out Jackson's MMA Series 10. I know we have about 4 more minutes here, so I want to devote that to Trout Cotto again. It's a huge fight for Austin Trout and his career, Will. In terms of the Pacific game plan, can Trout win a decision in Madison Square Garden? Is that possible for him to pull off? I mean, does he absolutely have to outbox Cotto to no end, or can he win a close decision and pull off the victory? What has to happen?
Who knows, man? I mean, when Bradley won that decision against Manny Pacquiao, anything's possible. But
that's true.
Yeah, he can't play around here. I mean, bottom line, Cotto, with that peekaboo type of style that Cotto has, Austin Trout, he's going to definitely have to, I think, for one, utilize that jab. He has a really good reach, but he's going to have to be really aggressive there, not get it caught up along the ropes, and he cannot afford to be inactive. And what I mean is that he cannot follow Cotto around and not throw punches, because that's just going to be a disaster. Because every time that Cotto lands a punch, that arena is going to go crazy. And I know that regardless of what they say, that has to affect the judging. It always does. So Austin Trout, he's just going to have to go in there and just decisively put away Cotto in every round. He has youth on his side. Like I said, outside of Albuquerque, he's still kind of unknown. The Showtime series is definitely, All Access is definitely helping him out. But he's going to have to go all out because, this guy, he's a real laid-back, cool guy. Don't get me wrong. But his personality, I don't think, is the one that's going to get him over. It's his skills in the ring, and he definitely has to definitely bring that to Cotto. You posed a good question earlier if Cotto was overlooking this guy, and, possibly, and that will definitely be to Austin Trout's advantage.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. That's going to do it for our show. This a little piece of breaking news. LeVar Johnson has pulled out of the Fox prelims of the latest UFC on Fox card. He was fighting Brendan Schaub. According to Dana White, that's on his Twitter and Facebook feed. LeVar Johnson is injured. So that's supposed to be a decent fight on the Fox undercard. That's supposed to, I think it's going to air on FX instead of Field TV. That's next week on UFC on Fox. There's another crazy weekend. Next week, man, we got UFC on Fox, and we have the 4th edition of Juan Manuel Marquez and Manny Pacquiao. So it continues to be busy here in combat sports. So, again, you can get in touch with FightFans Radio through YouTube, Ustream, Twitter, Facebook, all using FightFans Radio. That has our show along with tons of other great shows featuring combat sports. You can get in touch with us through email through lowblow505@gmail.com. through Twitter, through @LowBlow, through YouTube again. Check out our YouTube page for all the latest updates concerning Trout Cott, through youtube.com/LowBlow505, and through our Facebook and Twitter feed again. So for myself, Justin Goodrum, that's Will McClary, and we'll see you next week on LowBlow Radio.
Peace.
This has been the LowBlow on SouthwestFight.com, USCombatSports.com, and FightFans Radio.